Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Special Edition Women's NCAA Tournament. LSU is in the tournament. We know that. We had a full episode on that yesterday. They will play at home. They are the 3 seed in the Spokane 1 region. I believe I have that right. I'm Zach Ewing with advocate columnist Scott Rabalais here to just kind of give you a quick hitter, a quick preview of this weekend. If you want the full podcast, that is on our LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to that. But this particular preview video is brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake Health. They are the championship healthcare provider of LSU athletics. And Scott, look, it's another year for Kim Mulkey's Tigers, another 3 seed, another first and second round at home, just kind of right in their comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Mulkey talks about pointing for every year, making sure you get a top 4 regional seed so that you get to host the first 2 games, which obviously gives you a much better chance to advance than instead of going to play on someone else's home court. This is totally different dynamic from the men's tournament where you're forbidden from playing on your home court, unless you're Dayton in the first 4. I guess we get to play at home. So they got what they wanted. They looked like a 2 seed for a long time, but kind of fell off at the end of the season with some injuries and got bounced in the SEC tournament semis. They probably would have to win the SEC tournament to stay at a 2, but a 2 or 3, you're going to play some tough teams down the road, and this is where they started from 2 years ago to win the national championship, as you said. So it is very familiar territory for LSU, and I certainly like their chances of advancing at least to the Sweet 16.
So LSU's opening round game will be the last opening round game of the tournament to tip off. I say opening round. This is not the first 4, the actual round of 64. It'll be the last game to tip off, 9:15 p.m. estimated on Saturday night. That could, of course, be later if the first game between Florida State and George Mason should go long. That one starts at 6:45 p.m. at the PMAC. And then the winners of the 2 Saturday games will play Monday night, again in Baton Rouge. We don't have the time for that one yet, but that will be, to get to the Sweet 16, which would be in Spokane. So first of all, big picture, Scott, what do you think of the Tigers' draw in this one?
For the regional or just for this game?
Just overall, I mean, and we should mention the top 2 seeds in this regional are number 1 overall seed UCLA, and then the number 2 seed is NC State, whom LSU beat back in December.
Yeah, I mean, look, you avoided UConn being your 2 seed, which I think is always, when they're not a number 1, that's always a pleasure. You knew they were going to get sent to a different regional from Texas or South Carolina, which are both 1 seeds. But UCLA is obviously a very good team. Team LSU beat in the Sweet 16 last year in Albany, New York. They're very good. They're not like super scary good. Look, I continue to think there are 6, 7, 8 teams that can win the national championship this year, and I think LSU is one of them. UCLA is certainly one of them. And in NC State, you play a 2 seed that it's a little suspect. I mean, they played well down the stretch, but LSU beat them by 17 in the Bahamas back in November. And I think if you had to pick a 2 seed that would be in your path, that's who you'd want to play. But you never know what can happen. I mean, if you recall 2 years ago when LSU on their march to the national championship, Indiana was the 1 seed. They got knocked off at home, I believe, by Miami, who LSU ended up beating in the Elite 8. LSU's toughest game was against Utah, which was the 2 seed that year, a 30-win team. And LSU just scraped by. That ended up being their toughest game of the whole NCAA tournament. So that could be the case again. But, I don't think it's a terrible draw for LSU. You're going to play some tough teams, and obviously you're playing very far away from home. And in the first round, you're playing very late at night. I can't believe this is the last game of the night. Maybe it's because there's a dearth of really good West Coast teams or something like that. But,
USC's playing
UCLA.
But they could have put USC. But anyway, that's more of a personal complaint. But zeroing in on this weekend and first with San Diego State, again, LSU's favored by 28.5 points. I mean, this is not a game they should lose by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think, and you tell me if you disagree, but I think it's important to see how LSU starts. I mean, they don't want this to be one of those games where they fall behind by 8 points in the second quarter and have to claw back and play Flau'jae Johnson and Anissa Morrow and Michaela Williams and play them 30-plus minutes, especially considering Morrow and Johnson are kind of nursing injuries right now. Like, you would like to put your foot down in this game by halftime and really be able to rest some players for Monday night, I would think.
Yeah, I think ideally, if you're Kim Mulkey, the ideal thing would be to not go a lot of minutes with especially with Johnson and Morrow. You know, maybe play them 20 something minutes. You know, Morrow plays a lot when she's in there. You know, no matter what. So it might be hard to convince her to take her out of the game if she's not in foul trouble. But yeah, you like to go into your bench, which is deeper than it was last year when they went all the way to the Elite Eight. I think it's definitely a deeper team. And yeah, it's a game LSU should win. I don't think Kim Mulkey is concerned about what the point spread is or sending a statement or anything like that. You want to win. I think LSU, you know, it's hard to see a scenario where they don't win by double digits. But yeah, the start of the game is crucial for a lot of reasons, including the fact you want to see how Flau'jae Johnson with the shin splints and how Anissa Morrow with coming off the sprained foot. Look, they were both in walking boots at the selection show watch party Sunday night at the PMAC. And so that looked troubling. The Kim Mulkey said they're both good to go. I think if LSU made the SEC tournament final, Morrow would have played. Obviously, they held Flau'jae out of the whole thing. But as we were leaving, Reed Darcy, our beat writer, peeked out on the court and saw Flau'jae Johnson working on her jump shot. So she was out there, practicing a little bit to get a little rust off because she hadn't played in a while. Look, she will have had 3 weeks to rest. And is anything good about playing late Saturday night is that it gives even more time to rest from the last time she played, which was the second to last game of the regular season. So at Alabama. So it's I think those things work to LSU's favor. But it's a concern. It's a concern because they need all three of their big three, Flau'jae, Anissa, and Michaela Williams, to make it all the way to the Final Four in Tampa.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, I'm not talking about point spread. Like LSU doesn't have to cover 28.5 points against San Diego State to convince me that they are prepping for a Final Four run. But I don't think this should be a game in the fourth quarter. If it is, I think LSU has problems. And the one thing about San Diego State, I will say, because they're a little bit of a nondescript team as far as like you can't find a statistical reason why they're in the NCAA tournament. By the way, they won the Mountain West tournament final by in triple overtime over Wyoming, which is the reason they got in. They would not have been in the tournament if it weren't for that. But they're a decent rebounding team. They're a decent 3-point shooting team, but they're a slow team. Okay. And the way they do this is by possessions per game on average. And the average in the NCAA for women's basketball this year was 68.4 points per possessions per game. LSU is a fast team. They are 73 possessions per game. That's 20th in the country. Just for comparison's sake, Oklahoma is number 1 at 77.8. San Diego State is all the way down at 248th in the country at just 67 possessions per game. So they're going to try to slow things down, and that could make it difficult to pull away. But let's just imagine for a minute that LSU does get past San Diego State. Doesn't take a big imagination to do that. Who do you think they'd rather play Monday night, Florida State or George Mason?
Oh, no question. They'd rather play George Mason. Rather see the upset. Florida State, they're an ACC team. Obviously, comes the only one of these the teams that comes from a Power Four conference that were well tested, and they're 23-8, and they've got Tanaya Latson, the leading scorer in the country, averaging about 24 points per game, 24.9, excuse me. So that is a concern, and LSU has given up some points to other teams' big scorers at times this year. Sometimes kind of get the feeling they're like, we're going to let you score and we're going to clamp down on everyone else. And it's not a bad strategy in women's basketball, but she can fill it up. And that's a problem. And like, I'm thinking of LSU with Flau'jae's injury more so than Morrow. I think Morrow is going to be okay, but Flau'jae's injury, a little bit like I thought of LSU in 2022, that Mulkey's first season, when Alexis Morris, their point guard, had the knee sprain and was not right. She played, but she came off the bench. They struggled in the first round game against Jackson State. They had to mount a big second half comeback to win that game. And then they were never really in the game against the 6th seed, which Florida State is, Ohio State, and lost by double digits. So that is there is a market, like you said, you don't have to win by a blowout. You don't have to cover the spread, but you don't want to, if you're LSU, you don't want to see them struggle either. So because the second round game against likely Florida State, obviously, is going to be a bit of a test, and a 3-6 matchup is not one that you take for granted.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And also with Florida State, you have Michaela Timpson, who is third in the nation in blocks per game, 3.2 blocks per game. So you got to look out for her as well, an inside presence. Although I will say, I don't want to dismiss George Mason here. And the reason I say that, obviously LSU has been this 3 seed, and they've played 11 seeds a couple of times, I think, in Mulkey's first 3 years. They've had some upsets, including last year, where that happened. And also, George Mason, one of the better teams in the country in turnover margin, and particularly in turnovers forced. Okay, they are. Let's see, I had it here a second ago. They are in the top 50 in the nation in turnover rate. They are, according to Bart Torvik, they're 12th in the nation in percentage of turnovers forced against them on offense. So they're not easy to turn it over against. And they're 30th in the country in turnovers that they force on defense. So not an easy matchup either, if that's what it ends up being. But either way, should be a fun game Monday night. And we'll be there every step of the way, Rab. Like, I guess if we had to put you on the spot for a prediction, LSU gets out of this first weekend, right?
I think so. I mean, with a slight caveat that like Flaugier Johnson could not play much against San Diego State, and LSU wins, but they're going to need her the second round, I think, and moving forward. Yeah, I think they get through that. After that, it's who can say? Like as I said earlier, the Utah game was in a lot of respects their toughest game. That was the Sweet 16, and it just gets tougher once you get to the Sweet 16. LSU had a very tough game that they won against UCLA last year in the Sweet 16 before they played Iowa and Caitlin Clark and lost in the regional final. So I think they can do it, but not just the big three. Mention this real quick. They're going to have to get a performance somewhere at some point from the supporting cast. They're going to have to get one of the point guards, Cheyenne Day Wilson or last year Poa, to do well. They're going to have to get Samaya Smith to play really well. They're going to have to get Kaylin Gilbert to come off the bench. I think of the game LaDeja Williams had at forward for LSU against Utah in the Sweet 16 2 years ago. She was tremendous. And they don't win that game without LaDeja Williams playing so well in that game, and she wasn't one of their more heralded stars. So they're going to have to get some of that, some of them with supporting cast. It sounds like there could be a column for someone this week. Think about that.
Well, you can check out Scott Rabalais' writing at theadvocate.com/LSU, and we will be with you all week previewing the women's NCAA tournament. This has been an LSU Sports Insider Update. It's brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake Health. They are the championship healthcare partner of LSU athletics. He's Scott Rabalais. I'm Zach Ewing, and we will have more of these as the week goes on. So until next time, everybody, enjoy the week.